Good morning. My name is Jessica Rorson, and I'm here with Jenny Glessman and with Shelley Thone-Tchaikovsky. We're here today for grant writing, and we're really happy to have Shelley here with us. This is the last of our 6 sessions that we've done together over the last year in economic development. We have partnered with Sage Hill and Northwest Community Futures to be able to offer these very robust training opportunities virtually for you and your community. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. And before we get started, I just want to introduce Jenny Glessman, and she's just going to say hello from the CF offices.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Glessman. I'm with the Sage Hill Community Futures office in Bruno. And on behalf of us and the Northwest Community Futures office out of North Battleford, we'd just like to welcome everybody. For those that don't know anything about the Community Futures program, we have 13 offices across the province. We deal with loans, advice, and support for rural businesses and communities. So if you ever have any questions, the offices are always here to answer. One of the things we do are training sessions like these. And with that, grant writing is, I would say, is one of our most popular sessions because so many of us deal with grants in our businesses and in our community organizations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shelley to introduce herself, and then we'll dive into this great detail of grant writing.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Jessica. I can't believe we're at the end of our series for this year. It's been a lot of fun. Those of you that have joined, excuse me, I have to admit I've got a frog in my throat this morning. So if I do a few times and start taking lozenges, please forgive me. But we've had a lot of fun, and some of you will have heard this first part so many times that you probably know it by heart. But before I actually talk about my background, I'll just mention that I'm joining you from Treaty 4 territory in my hometown of Foam Lake. And I'm a Saskatchewan girl, born and bred, and actually I understand there might be a few people from my home stomping grounds, Viscount, here today. So I grew up on a farm south of Viscount, on the north shores of Great Manitou Lake. And I wouldn't have wanted to grow up anywhere else in the province. I love that area and don't get home that much anymore. But I still call that home, even though I've been in Foam Lake here and worked here for 40 plus years. My formal background or education is in the area of sport, culture, and recreation administration and community development. I was employed by the town here as a leisure and parks director for a number of years. Once I left that position, I started to move into doing some community consulting work. And I worked predominantly with rural area nonprofit organizations and boards and committees in rural Saskatchewan. Rural Saskatchewan is where my heart is. I like visiting the cities, but I'm a country girl at heart, and I always will be. I also bring a retail business background to the table, where my husband and I owned a greenhouse and nursery business for 20 years. I'm all about volunteering. I'm all about community development. And I believe everything that we do is built on relationships and communication. So that's just a little bit about me. Why me when it comes to the grant game? I think I've chased grants. I'm in no different boat than you folks. I have spent years and years with different organizations chasing grants, and I call it a disease of grantitis that makes this very stressful and sometimes very real as well. So I understand both sides of the game. I've been an applicant. I still am an applicant with some of the volunteer work I do. I've been a funder. I've been a sponsor as a retail business, a funder as an organization that has money to actually award and distribute. So I've experienced both sides of that equation. And I've also adjudicated at various levels, from local to national levels. So I've seen what it is that you folks have actually submitted. And so I share the frustration, and I share the understanding, I think, from having been literally on, if you can say three sides to the equation. So I hope we're going to have a little bit of fun here this morning. We have a lot to cover. I said to Jessica and Jenny before we started that I really like the panel format where people question and answer and that type of thing. Well, you're going to get more of a lecture from me, unless I just turn the camera off every once in a while and say, over to you, Jessica, or over to you, Jenny, and they can fill in the blanks. I think that might be kind of fun for our final session of the year, maybe. Or maybe not. I guess I might get fired in midstream, but we're here for about an hour and a half or so. So bear with me. You're going to listen to me talking a lot. Questions and answers. Hopefully we'll have some time for that as we go through. I know the gals will monitor the chat box, and quite often they'll say, whoa, we have some questions that need to be dealt with. But we'll try and stay on point with time. But this is what we're going to cover today. So we have a lot to go on. We're going to talk about the impact we want to make very briefly. Just some common questions that I've had over the years from people like you. We'll cover a few of those, and you'll probably see yourself in some of the questions that are answered. Just a page of some common reasons for rejection. I always believe it's good to understand rejection because that helps us be better. So some of the common reasons for rejection, it helps us to understand those are things we need to avoid. Grant readiness. I can't tell you enough about grant readiness. This session, actually, you guys and girls, was 1.5 to 2 hour sessions. We had are you grant ready as one session, then grant writing. So because you'll hear me preach, so to speak, a little bit about the most important part of grant writing is, are you grant ready? So we'll touch on what was a whole session before we get into some of the specifics about writing, but we will need to bring that. It'd be remiss not to mention that. And I think there's a previous recorded session from a year or so ago about grant readiness that you can access through Sage Hill if you, in fact, want to get that full meal deal on that aspect of it. We'll then be getting into, a whole list of things, from terminology to outcomes to missions and visions. Those are things I love. I love getting into the planning aspect of it. And I think that's probably one of the challenges. Often, I may be a bit of an anomaly because not everybody loves that aspect of this work. One of my favorite parts is some of the actual grant administrators and consultants speak. The do's and don'ts, some of the real life stuff that they're saying, don't do this, make sure you do this, and so on and so on. So anyways, I'll mention as well, you may have it in your inbox already, but there's just a template and a guide that I've provided for all session participants, and it's something I'll be referring to a little bit as we go along. And what it is, it's just some ideas of things that you can actually follow in your grant preparation and your grant writing as well. So, and we'll be talking about a lot of what's in that book today. So what's the impact we want to make today? I think there's numerous things, but it's all about additional skills, confidence, understanding the importance of being grant ready, the awareness of do's and don'ts. I think the increased awareness as well that a team might not be a bad thing. Often grant writing and grant preparation gets left to the poor secretary treasurer of that nonprofit organization. And the chairperson comes in and throws this on their table and says, here, this is due tomorrow. Trust me, that happens so often. So really, I think the idea of a team, we're going to talk about that as we get through, but it's something that you need to really, really think about. So what are some of the things, and I can only imagine some of the things that are going through your mind as we're venturing into grant writing and grant readiness. But these are some real things that have been submitted to me over time of doing these sessions. From how do I get better quality answers and explanations, missions and visions? Please help me. What do they want? Budgeting, that's a huge one. And it's such an important part because that's the dollar factor. And that's exactly what we're after, is the actual resources of finances. Formal language, and how to be brief, clear, and concise, more proficient and professional. Just what are some tips? You know, some things that I can refer back to. And I guess just how not to be overwhelmed when I sit down to apply for grants. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to say 3 words when you talk about being overwhelmed: planning, planning, and planning. You want to be overwhelmed, you don't do any planning when you sit down to do grant writing. If you have planned and done some of the preparation, that really goes a long, long way to not being overwhelmed. And trust me, the grant processes today can be overwhelming. So here are some of standard reasons why you folks may have been rejected over the years. From it's a poor fit for the organization. Your actual goals and outcomes and vision doesn't come anywhere near matching what the priorities of the funder are. You were late. You didn't follow the guidelines. You maybe had no community support, and maybe that was one of the guidelines that you had to have. It was felt that you were just a duplication of services, because funders don't want to duplicate services out there. They want their money to go above and beyond what someone else often is doing already for your population. Fishing expeditions, and I think you'll know maybe what I mean by that, where you just download 5 or 10 applications and just cut and paste like crazy and send it in, just hoping that you happen to snag that big fish out there somewhere. Often those types of things can be spotted a mile away, and they're just set aside very quickly. No plan is evident. Your budgets don't match what your activities are. And the bottom line is that you simply weren't grant ready prior to submitting your application. That's the biggie. So when we talk about grant ready, there's a huge difference. And I mean, often when we say grant writing, we think that's all encompassing. It's not. Grant writing, you can call it grant writing, but grant readiness is actually more time should be spent on the grant readiness portion of your work than the actual writing. And I go back to the events that you plan as an example. I would venture to guess that the majority of the time that's spent towards a successful initiative in your communities and with your organizations is spent prior to the actual delivery of the said initiative. You might be totally exhausted from delivering that initiative because it's been, 36 hours of, wow, getting ready and getting it done. But the fact is I'll venture to guess you probably spent 100 hours preparing for it. That's success. And the same goes with grant. So grant ready versus grant writing. We're going to talk a little bit about grant readiness right now. And this is a whole hour-and-a-half presentation on its own. I just pulled a few things that I want to highlight. And one of the things people always ask is, where do I find those opportunities? You know what? Where do I go for those types of things? Well, I really start, and 90% of it is I know people who know people. You know what? I talked about building relationships. You get to know other people that are like-minded or in like-minded organizations. If you're a daycare or a curling club, you get to know those other people in your other communities. Build the relationships with them so it's a quick, hey, Jenny, we're looking at doing some of this stuff. What is your group doing? What have you done? You call them, you text them, you email them. Never underestimate the power of a relationship. I truly believe that is one of the most powerful things on the face of the earth, are those relationships. Again, checking out your similar organizations. Where did you get your funding from? We all will share our successes. It's not a matter of, I don't want to tell them because they might take some of the resources that our group might get. Don't ever think that. Think of the mindset that the more we can help each other, what goes around comes around. Someone will help me back in turn someday. So online, most funders have websites, and I'm gonna do an additional share here, just quickly. Hopefully I don't lose everything. If I do, it's been nice knowing all of you. Okay, I'm just gonna share. Where is it here? Can't seem to find it. Oh, no, I won't share. What it was just, you know what, online, when we say it is so easy. I mean, with Google, we live with Google these days, or search engines. I mean, take your organization's name, you know, throw in financial funding, sponsorship, grants. And the example I had that seemed to disappear on me, literally put about 15 to 20 different funding opportunities right on my screen in front of me. So, I mean, online, that's really where we're at in searching for these things. Check with your local municipality, your regional offices for community development, your community futures people, governing bodies at the provincial level, our MLAs and our MPs keep registries. Use those folks. They're there to help you. They have extensive grant listings. Sign up to the e-news from organizations that you may have parent bodies for. You know, if you're a curling club, sign up for the e-news of the Saskatchewan Curling, because they will send you grant information, and they'll actually remind you that this grant is due in 2 months' time, and they'll help you. There are grant services out there, and I mean, you can subscribe to these. Grant Watch Canada is one of them. I mean, it can be everything from a week subscription for like 18 bucks up to $199 for a year subscription, where they'll actually, you'll fill out your online information, and they'll send you information as grants that may relate to you come up. But you pay for that. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but it's another option that's out there. But the fact is that research is number one, and it takes time. You can't do it when you're short of time. Some of the websites, again, we talked about that. Keywords for your internet search, you know, from foundations that provide funding to nonprofit, if you're a nonprofit organization. You know, and I mean, Charity Canada and foundations of Canada offer a lot of information. So where are the grant opportunities? They're there, but it takes time to find them. So we get to the point where you've found your opportunities. Now what? Well, I call it your grant briefcase. You have to be ready to build a strong application. And I've broken it down just into 4 basic groups that we'll talk a little bit about. And it starts with your organization. And do you know your organization? Do you have your details in a briefcase ready to provide? Most groups don't. And that creates issues and creates stress. Have you done your research on your funder? Do you know what your funder wants, what their priorities are? Again, a lot of organizations don't. They just take a look at the online application, or if they've printed it off, a PDF version, and then, okay, here we go. Let's write this thing. Do you have your details down to the specific, minute details of what it is that you're actually doing? And finally, have you written a summary? And again, that's the last thing you do, but often the summary is the first thing asked for in an application. It's tell us a little bit about what you're trying to achieve here. And you can't do that until you actually build your project from the ground up. So what does it mean? Your organization's information. And again, right down to listing of your members or your directors. Do you have that ready for cutting and pasting? And not every grant will ask for all of this. But if you have all of this ready, you go, I've got it. I don't have to go searching for it. And I mean, our bylaws or our constitution, oh goodness, that's in a cardboard box in somebody's basement. I never got it when I took over this job, and they're in Mexico for 3 months. So now what? So that's the preparation. You have to make sure you have those things, your charitable numbers. These are simple things, but it's important. If you aren't a registered charity or a registered nonprofit corporation, do you have a municipal declaration that states you, in fact, are a reputable organization? You just happen to not be registered as a nonprofit corporation. Sometimes those are accepted. Do you have that? You don't just get that. You have to, you have to plan, because those municipalities only meet once or twice a month. So right down to your strategic plan. There's the plan. And I always mention this in every session I do. Planning. Do you have a strategic plan? Do you have your mission, your vision of your organization, your values? Do you have your outcomes, the impact you want to make with the work you're doing, and your specific goals? A lot of organizations do not have that. And if you are throwing a grant application to complete and your board of directors has not supplied you with some of these details, I would say stop. You need to help me before I even start filling this in. So your current audited statement, you're not asked for it all the time, but you need to be prepared in case you are. Your organization's history. And again, you can see examples of that in the template book that I've provided you. It just talks about you as an organization and why you're credible. Hey, we've been around for 90 years. Are we credible? You bet we are. So, then other relevant things, whether it's your social media links or that type of thing, are important. So you need to be ready with your own organization's information. You've found some grants to apply for. Have you taken the time to research this organization that your funder? Do you know their name? Do you know their mission and what their priorities are? Have you checked the criteria or the requirements so that you know whether you're even eligible? What are their funds what are the allowable expenses for their funds? Does it match what you're planning on doing? The timelines, the process. Do you know who their grant administrator is? Are you willing to give them a call and say, hey, you know what? What are previously successful applicants? Can you tell us a bit about what makes for a successful applicant with you folks? Do never underestimate the amount of information you can get from a grant administrator, because they want to see you be successful. So get to know them. There's building relationships again. Then, once you get to know them, build your grant spreadsheet. Here's a couple grants that we have, and we've put it all out in front of us. So it's at a glance. I know when the deadlines are. I know who my team is, even who's going to actually help work on this. I know what's required. What do I have to dig out of my grant briefcase that I already have all the information ready? I need letters of support, so I can go ahead and get those done. We need to be a registered nonprofit for this. Okay, I'm not a registered nonprofit, so I call the grant administrator. Will a municipal declaration help? Nope. Okay, if it won't, I'm not eligible for that. So then maybe we have some other work to do. Why aren't we a registered nonprofit? That brings up a whole new ball game of what we maybe need to do to be grant ready. So I recommend put your application spreadsheet together, even for a year. And here we're ready. There might be 6 opportunities that we're going to try and pursue. And you have them at a glance ready in your files. Be ready with some of the things that are online. This is an example from a few years ago of SaskCulture grants. These are things that they say you should be prepared to answer. For every application, we may not ask for every question, but this is a general list of what we think you should be prepared for. because that organization is trying to be the best they can be so that you, in fact, can be successful. So look for those things, those checklists. Here's another checklist, just an example. And these examples are in your the email that showed up in your inbox this morning as well. But it's what do we need? And you check, yep, we need this. Nope, we don't need this, or some things aren't applicable. But it shows for each grant what it is that you need. This is just different ways of organizing yourself. And when you organize yourself, it takes the stress away. And I use this example whereby organizing yourself and planning ahead of time is not additional to the work you do. It should simply be how you do your work. We do it in an organized, methodical, planned fashion. And you will find serenity in the grant game when it comes to that, because you're prepared. There's no better feeling than being prepared. So what else needs to be in your briefcase? You need your specific details now. You know, what's the outcome of your project? I have a whole handful of different grant applications that have been completed here. They all ask, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Outcomes aren't what you're doing. It's not about what you're doing. Outcomes are about the impact you're trying to make. So if you're a daycare, obviously you're putting on some wild fundraiser that's going to be a lot of fun. But the fact is, that's not your outcome. Your outcome really is about the well-being of the children that you serve, the care and well-being. Though that's the impact you want to make. So you need to differentiate, and we're going to talk a bit more about outcomes and the differences. Then you need your goals. That's how you do it. Your goals are more specific. They're about the how and the what you're doing. Who's your target group? What are their issues? Do you have community support? Do you have partners in this thing? Then we get down to your evaluation. Do you have a plan on how you're going to evaluate this thing? What does success look like? These are all questions you need to answer, because there isn't a grant out there that doesn't ask for a follow-up. And we're going to talk more about that as well. But you need to deal with those things before you even start writing your grant. Then your work plan. That's where we shine. We do the best at the nitty-gritty details, the date, the time, who's going to sit at the door, action plans, tasks. That's where we usually start. And what I'm trying to tell you is you need to back up and start further back here with developing your outcomes and your goals. The specifics of the plans, the budgets, those types of things, we find those things easier because they're easier to grasp. They're actual actions and tasks. But that's where we're at right now. Then we get into the application summary. And again, it's important because often that's the first glance that an adjudicator has at your application. And if you can have a summary that speaks to them about the narrative of the activities you're doing and who you're doing it for and what impact you're trying to make, it's kind of, I call it the W5 of the grant. It's the who, what, why, where, when, and how. And I'll bring up, hopefully I find the document that I'm going to share. But all of this can't be written, and it's got to be in like a paragraph or half a page. But this can only be written once you've done all your detail work. But yet it's the first thing they'll ask for on your grant page most of the time. Briefly describe your activity. That's what the summary is. And you've got to be ready to deal with that. The other thing is, and this is just another way to help organize yourself, and I'll show you this as well. It's in your guidebook. But put your organization or your initiative proposal template together. And this is just putting everything that you know into a document that you can cut and paste when you need it for your organization's initiative that you're applying for a grant for. That's getting ready. It's just another way. So I'm going to try and share that I didn't lose you last time, so I shouldn't show you this time. Okay, we are. There we are. Okay.
You
The
might
project
have to stop.
summary
Oh, there it comes. Yep, it's there.
Yeah, okay. The project summary statement. And again, so this is the who, why, what, how, when, and where. And it's important. It's done in a half a page or less, but it's just a passionate story that needs to tell, talk about the impact, why you're doing it. It talks about increasing skills and knowledge and pride in the community. What is it that you're doing? Leadership development for teenagers. How are you doing it? Facilitated workshops, and then the details on the bottom. But this is just an example of what you need to put together once you do all your activity details and you have your briefcase filled. And you need all this information before you even start writing your grant. Because if you don't, you're just going to be making it up. And I always say, put your hand up if you've ever made stuff up. I have, because the grant is due tomorrow, and I'm the only one doing it. Yeah, we had to. I had to make missions and visions up. I think I was pretty good at it, and I was probably pretty close. But was it right? No. And shame on my organization for not having that work done for me. And you tell your organization, your board of directors that. You say, let's get our act together so that we can provide the people that are doing this important work for us with the tools that they need. So the other thing I wanted to show you, and I'm going to go back to the last part of this attachment in this document. And it's, it's your grant proposal template. And again, you can get your organization, you can have it ready. This can serve two things. This can serve as a proposal as well. So you put it on your letterhead and you start talking about your organization, a summary of your project, table of contents, your narrative. Here's the initiative. Here's what we're doing, kind of your summary of your specific information. What needs are we addressing? Project details and goals, the outcome or the impact of this work. Then we get into the specifics, the activities, the timelines, who's involved, whether it's volunteers or staff, that type of thing, the resources that we need, our evaluation plan. And then what about down the road? Do we have partners for sustainability, or do we have a plan to keep this going after we get the grant for the next year? Then our budget. You put information, this is a template you can follow, that in fact, if you've got the answers on there, you can cut and paste information into various different grants because you've already got the information. So this is called preparation and being grant ready. So I'm going to stop sharing that.
Shelley, while you're transitioning over, we just have a question I thought I might be able to just throw in here.
Sure.
It is how many grants, sorry, no, I just bumped out. Sorry. How many grants should you be seeking for a budget of $600,000 a year, just as an example?
There's no rule. There's no rule.
Yeah.
You know what? You can click on, that's a lot of money that you're trying to look at. But there's absolutely no rule, because some foundations, give six-figure grants. Some governments, some grants, like it really just depends. You've got to get out there and just do your research. I can't say for that amount there should be 6 grants, because no, probably in reality for that amount of money, you're probably going to be looking at 30 plus different grants. That's a lot of money unless you actually really hook up with a major sponsor. It depends. There's so many variables. There's actually no Bible when it comes to specifics on that. I wish I could tell you, but there isn't, because it's not a black and white game. There's so many variables, but I hope that kind of answers the question. Are we good to go, Jessica?
We sure are.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
So finally, I just want to, what do funders want from applicants? These are things that you need to be aware of. You need to prove that you are the organization that can make an impact on their priorities. So that's with your history, your vision, your mission, your outcomes. You need to show them the impact you're going to make. That you're the one that deserves to get that money. You also need to show them that you figure you can reasonably deliver on your promises through the work and the writing in your application. They want to see the positive impact that their resources will in fact provide. And again, you're meeting their priorities. They aren't just giving you money and then saying, have fun. They have priorities and they want to see that happen. Finally, recognition. Most of the time, most funders require some type of recognition for their contributions towards the work that you do. So that's in a nutshell what funders are actually looking for from the applicants. So, I mean, I know that took longer than it should have. I'm going to be rushing to get through at the end, but are there any questions on grant readiness? And again, I took about probably 20 minutes to talk about what usually takes 90 to 120 minutes to talk about. So I'll just do a quick pause there before we move into some of the more specifics of grant writing.
At the moment, there are no other questions, but I think we've all learned how important it is to get all that ready stuff ready. It'll make the other job way easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, we'll carry on. So,
and just one last comment. Sorry, I just want to say that I will email everybody out the link to Shelley's Grant Ready webinar that she did previously for us. I'll send you out the recording just so that you have that also for when you're preparing.
That sounds great. Yeah, because I think that'll help this to flow a little bit better as well. But you know what? There's I'm going to do an on your mark, get ready, set, go type of thing here. Again, don't waste your time. Make sure you're applying for the proper grant in the first place. Read the guidelines. Is your organization and your goals a match for what that organization's or that funder's priorities are? Are you eligible even? If it explicitly states you have to be a registered charity, make sure to check with that grant administrator and say, can I get away with just being a registered nonprofit, or do I have to be a registered charity? Because if you have to be a registered charity, don't waste your time. And take note of the checklists that are provided. Most funders provide you an explicit checklist of what they require. Here's an example. Check it off. These are the things that we need before you even start. And again, this can vary from application to application. But be ready, have more than they need, but don't give them more than they need. Just give them what they ask for, but have this ready in your briefcase. Getting set, again, in your briefcase, your activities, your goals, the specifics, your plan for your project that you're applying for the dollars for. Most online apps will require that you set up an account or an application portal ahead of time. So give yourself time for that. Because you know what? Sometimes I've found I've gone with a deadline of a grant and I'm setting up trying to get into their portal. Well, their portal's down. And I'm going, oh, I shouldn't have left it. Well, then I find out they've given us an extension on time because they were down, but still that can create issues. So be ahead of time and get ready to be set up to actually do that online grant. And I'm saying online because most of the grants are done online now. Begin the process, provide them exactly what they're requesting to a T, and be prepared to do that. So when we get into actual grant writing, and I say this, it can be lonely because often it's just you It's just you. It's just left to one person. I always say, take a look at a team. See if you can recruit a team. Get that planner. Pick me. I love missions and visions and goals and outcomes and impact. I love working on that and framing that. So ask me to be a part of your grant team, and I'll be your planner to get some of that together and work with your board on that. Other people love going online and searching. They can spend hours doing it. It's a thrill of the chase, so to speak, for them. Get that tech person that loves Google searching and finds that to be a challenge. Get the writer, the person that can write an eloquent story or tell an eloquent story, that can actually take your vision and your dreams and put it on paper in a paragraph and make me want to give you money for it. Like, get them on your team. Get the budgeter, the person that isn't intimidated by the crunches of numbers. And I use artificial intelligence here. And again, I've used it a little bit, but I caution you, artificial intelligence, I believe, still can't write a passionate story. I still believe if you've written it, it shows there's passion. However, you can use things like ChatGPT or, it's a language model that'll help you generate human-like text, but don't rely on it. Use it as a resource that it's meant to be. You can also use things like Quillbot. That's more of a paraphrasing interactive tool that can maybe if you write the sentence, they can say, here's a better way to say it. So, there's some artificial intelligence. There's also budget apps and software apps that can help you. And you know what? If you really are into that, I think there's opportunity. But beware, because I think artificial intelligence is there to be used, but not to be abused. And that's my personal opinion. Others might say different, but it can lead to major plagiarism. It can lead to other issues. So just be aware that it can be a useful tool to help you. And then there's you, the leader. Someone needs to lead the team and direct traffic. And so I really encourage you to look at setting up a grant team. And you know what? I would suggest that grant team from your organization, they shouldn't be asked to do a whole bunch of other stuff. That's their job. Don't try and overload them. If granting is their job, let it be their job. And I know you say, but we don't have that many people. Well, you know what? Take a real good look at it, because if in today's volunteering, which we did this session a week or so ago, if you give people specific jobs that are focused, you're more apt to get those volunteers. You might bring more people in because you aren't asking them to do everything from baking to setting tables up to all that other stuff. Their job is just going to be on the grant team. So consider it. Don't dispel that isn't doable for your group. Investigate it. So the details, we're going to start going through some of the specifics of grant writing. I'm not going to read this, but I'm going to go through each of these areas one at a time. And I see I've got about 45 minutes left, so I'm going to have to hustle. I'm not going to talk so fast that you can't understand me, but and hopefully we'll have some time for questions. Again, Jenny and Jessica, if there are questions that you feel need to be answered, just put your hand up and stop me, and I will certainly stop. Terminology 101. I do wish there was a Bible of terminology that every funder and every application followed. Unfortunately, there isn't. So you need to be aware of the fact that different terms are used in different applications. Some of them are synonymous with each other or the same and mean the same. Some of them kind of mean the same. So some of them do, but they don't. So there again, it's like, it can drive you crazy because, well, what do they mean by this? Well, grants can be called allotment, sponsorship, giving, gifts. A mission statement can be known as a purpose or a mandate. Now I'm going to say something here. Someone will say a mandate is not the same as a mission. No, if you want to get down to technical aspects, sometimes it's not. But in this grant game, those things are used interchangeably. So if you're not sure and it says we want your organizational mandate, get on the line or on the email and contact the grant administrator and say, when you say mandate, would that mean purpose or mission? Or are you looking for something different? Don't guess if you aren't sure, but understand that sometimes these different words and the examples I've used here are used interchangeably by different funders. So you need to recognize the fact that, you may get one funder saying, identify the barriers. And the next funder will say the issues. The next one will say the challenges, the roadblocks, your needs. Just be aware that terminology is greatly varied, and you need to be able to understand that. But if all else fails, check with your grant administrator. Mission statements, and I can't see all of you, but I was going to ask, I hope every one of your organizations has an established mission statement, because it's all about what your organization does. And if you don't have a written statement, mission statement, get it done, and it needs to be done by 5 o'clock today. Get your board together and get it done, because you all need to be coming from the same point of view. If an organization doesn't have a written mission statement, and I come into your boardroom and I ask each of you separately what your mission is, I'll get 8 different answers. They'll be similar because you have an idea, but get it on paper. 5 steps to develop a mission statement is just, who are you? What do you do? Who do you do it for? What do these people or animals need if you're running a vet clinic or something? What do they need? How do these people or their situations change because of what you do? So answer those questions, then use artificial intelligence to put it into a sentence for you and see how it looks. But here's an example of my mission. Provides facilitation and training for organizations in rural Saskatchewan, striving to deliver meaningful, efficient community services, so citizens may enjoy well-being and quality of life. That may be long and wordy. I could probably, if I took time, I could probably shorten that. Shorter is better. Our municipality, until we changed it about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, our mission statement was 2 pages long. Yeah, not cool. So get your mission statement established. And this is one where I've done grant applications where we didn't have a mission statement, so I made it up. Guilty as charged. So be ready with a mission statement. It's what you do. Your vision. This is your North Star. It's called so many different things, but it's your dream. What's your vision? This is the ultimate impact that your organization will have because of what you do. You need to have that down. What is the impact your group wants to do? The question to answer is, if we do everything perfectly in our mission statement, what will our world look like? And I love the bumper sticker rule for length. I like it so that it can be 2 or 3 words. I mean, mine is a little bit long, but rural communities manage resources, resulting in the highest level of their people's well-being. I could change that to just people's well-being is my ultimate vision. I want to see everybody having in a state of well-being and high quality of life. So develop, what's your ultimate dream from your organization? And you know what? People have trouble with this because it's conceptual. It's up here. It's la la land, so to speak. But do it because it's the ultimate impact that you're wanting to make. How to develop outcomes, the why. We're getting more specific as we go along here. And outcomes isn't about what we do. And it took me a long time to grasp this, folks. But outcomes are about why we do what we do. It can be increased knowledge or awareness or skills or some betterment of social or economic conditions in our community. It can be, about wellness in youth or that type of thing. It's not about what you do. You need to address why you're doing what you're doing. So developing outcomes for your initiatives, it's about the future and creating better things. The one thing to remember when an application asks you for what outcomes or impact are you trying to make, we can only influence outcomes by what we do. And I'll show you examples of that right away. Outcomes can be influenced through our goals and our actions and our tasks, but you need to have your outcomes. It's the impact, because most applications will ask, what impact are you hoping to make? So here's an example of developing outcomes. I mean, you've got your organization, your target group, you've got the issue, lack of leadership skills, you've got how the issue was determined, that we had community surveys, we had a youth rally, and they told us these things. So then where do we go with that information? We developed outcomes. And I'm going to go to the bottom first. Outcomes we can't directly control. So we're going to organize a leadership workshop for teenagers. That's not an outcome. That you can directly do or not do. An outcome is about increased skills and knowledge of our teenagers, increased confidence and enthusiasm, increased pride and value in the community. Those are outcomes. They're like mini dreams. Your vision is your big dream. Your outcomes are your dreams for the various things that you do. You need to be ready with these, the impact that you're wanting to make in the specific areas of the work that you do for the grant applications. If you have an event already and you're struggling with, well, how do I develop an outcome for it? I love using the 5 whys of outcome development. It gets into, just play the devil's advocate, so to speak. If we say what do you do? We're having a youth leadership workshop. Well, why are you having that? Well, to teach the youth skills. Why is it important to teach the youth skills? That's 2 whys. You answer that question. Then you ask why again. For each answer, you ask why, and inevitably, after you ask why 5 times, you have literally moved away from what you're doing to why you're doing it. There's your outcome. We do youth leadership workshops. The outcome is to develop positive leadership attributes in our youth. There's why you're doing it. So if you have an activity already and are wanting to really examine why you're doing it, this is it's a fun and an effective way to pull outcomes and the why out of what you do. But it's important that you do that, because you may be asked for an impact statement on grants or an outcome statement. And to do that, you need to take what you're doing and actually pull the outcomes out of it. This is a relatively decent statement. It talks a bit about the need, and then it gets into, the target group and the outcomes that you're hoping to have. So it's a short statement about the impact that you're hoping to make. Now you're getting into the doing part. Goals. How to develop the goals that you're doing. The goals are how you, in fact, are going to have the impact that you want to make. They should be simple. And I mean, SMART goals, most of you have probably heard of SMART goals. They need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and have some type of time frame to them. So this is getting into the specifics. And again, to be able to provide all the activities and have this information in your briefcase to cut and paste into a grant application, you have to establish this ahead of time. But now you're ready to do that. So here's a couple examples. A non-SMART example would be just to say, we're going to plan and deliver workshops for youth in the community. That's very vague. A SMART goal would be, our board goal is to provide leadership training opportunities in 2023 through planning and facilitating a series of 4 workshops to educate, engage, and ignite our future leaders, the teenage youth in the community. You've been very specific about what you're doing. That's a SMART goal. So You need to develop, this is the how you're going to make the impact. So you're getting more specific as we go down. So now you take each of those goals and you start filling in the details. This is your project. This is what exactly you're going to do. What resources will we need? Who will participate? Here's the partners we have. Here's the community input and support that we have. Those details. If you need letters of support from your community. This is where you fill in the details from the goals towards the impact you're going to make, towards making your vision as an organization. So we go from general with mission, vision, outcomes, goals, down to specifics of what we're doing. We're planning the dates, the times, the locations. And these things are in the template for you. So we're getting more specific as we go. The resources that are required. Here's a general list of resources. What do we need for facilities? What do we need for volunteers? What do we need for materials? What about finances? What about grant requests? You're getting more specific now as you go. What resources do we need? So I'm going to just pause there for a second, because you need to write that information. We're going to get into some information now about tips and writing clear and concise. But I'm going to take a pause and a sip of tea. Are there any questions?
No, not. The only question is, Shelley, is would you mind sending me this presentation when you're done and I can send it out also?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Jenny? Are we good to go, Jenny?
Tamara, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Oh, thank you. So pretty much I just started up my foundation for the unhoused. And I was wondering, like, what type of grants would be good? I know not the bigger government grants as of yet, but the smaller for small business. Do you know which direction should I go with trying to apply for any grants? I'm looking to do transitional housing.
Okay, Tamara, that's a conversation that I would have to have, Jenny would have to have with you, for example. That's
Okay.
without seeing what your organization's vision and outcomes are. I can't answer
Okay.
that question. But those are conversations that I encourage you to reach out, to people like me or Jenny at Community
Okay.
Future and say, here's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Any direction. But there's a lot more information that has to exchange hands before a question like that could be answered, because that's getting into your specifics. So
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah, but thanks for asking that. Yeah.
So can you guys please drop your information in the chat that I can reach out?
Yeah.
The only thing that I'm concerned about, Tamara, is that you're from the States and we're based out of Canada. So likely a lot of the grants and programs that we know about may or may not work for you as you're in the States.
That's
Right.
Just-
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, I'm here in North Carolina, correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
but I
Thank
always
you.
say, feel free to contact us. And I think our contact information can certainly be shared, Tamara.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank
we will definitely make sure it's in there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You bet. Okay, we'll carry on. Clear and concise. And again, this gets into some specifics. And I love this quote. There's a couple quotes I'm going to share with you. Jargon everywhere, but not a drop to read. You know what? Special language used by specific industries or pop culture sayings of the day, I would generally stay away from it. Your own acronyms that you use within your own organization. I'm very much sport, culture, and recreation, so I use the SPRA a lot, or just those acronyms. our funders might not have a clue what they are. So really, when we talk about jargon, it literally is, and I'm using some notes here to share this with you. It's the shorthand that people use to talk to each other. What business jargon will keep you in the loop, eh? A is very much a Canadian thing, I would suggest. Instead of keep informed, let's keep informed. We'll buy in on that. Well, we're asking for the support. We'll create the synergy that we need. Well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that, but that talks to cooperation and teamwork. And sometimes keeping it simple is a lot better. Let's ramp that up. Those are jargon type things. Generally stay away from the jargon that your organization is going to ramp it up and get this initiative delivered, because it's bordering on too informal. Pop culture, again, some examples are, hey, what's up? What are we doing? This is going to be the sickest event this year. It's sick. Well, no, it's going to be good or nice, but let's stay away from sick. We're amped. We're just amped about the work that we're doing. We're excited. Those are buzzwords or slang, and I would suggest that you stay away from that. And again, technical terms. If I have technical terms from certain areas that I work in. Like I was in the horticulture industry for 20 years, and I can start talking about botanical names, but I would suggest we don't. So you may know some of those botanical names of plant materials and that type of thing, but let's use the common terms. So I think be ready to use common English. Academic reading, again, I had an adjudicator actually say this. I read 5 paragraphs and I didn't know what they said. So I guess there's a time and a place for academic writing. If I'm doing my thesis or my doctorate, okay, academic writing is right. And I've given you an example of a sentence that I actually saw right on the bottom, and I have no idea what it means, but it's academic writing. And I won't read it, but it's about the tenets of the hypothesis that may have been incarnated. And I mean, that gets into academics, and there's a time and a place, but most of the grants that our nonprofits would in fact be applying for, academic writing probably would not be suggested as the way to go. You have to tell your story. Just because you know it doesn't mean your funder knows it or the adjudicator. You have to fill in the blanks using words that your funder will probably understand. Trying to use new buzzwords, a grant application probably isn't the time to start doing that. Stick with the tried and true and trusted language that we know. Take a look at the language that your funder uses on their website, where they explain what it is that they're going to be funding. You don't have to use identical language, but if it's fairly clear and concise, that's what they expect in return. And I think showing creativity is fine, but to be clear, keep it simple is probably the best rule of thumb. Keep it simple with straightforward, non-technical language. Here's the other quote from Mark Twain. If I had more time, I would have written you a short letter. A short, brief letter is harder to write. It really is, because it challenges your mind on being concise. So taking out a lot of those phrases, and I'm bad for this. I go on and on and on. That don't muddle. And, practicing this. But, instead of saying lots of people, we can say many. I mean, we can take words out. Often what happens is we are limited in an online application to only so many words, 500 words or less. So we have to practice this. Get rid of the connectors, the therefores, the whereases, the lawyer talk. Sometimes those connections aren't necessary words. So I think, using acronyms, you can use acronyms, but you maybe need to define them. And sometimes you'll do that in the first sentence or the first bullet. And I'll use the Saskatchewan Urban Municipal Association, and I may put SUMA in parenthesis after that, which can send the message that that is what I'm referring to if I in fact use SUMA acronym later on. So be aware of that your funder may not know what those acronyms mean. You've got to be good. Often adjudicators will they want to pick out your ask in the first paragraph. You've lost their interest sometimes if you go on and on. So you need to be concise to the point that you make sure your need and your target group and your ask and for what you're doing is in the first paragraph. Copying and pasting, we all do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes we can copy and paste those long answers. Well, make sure to get them shorter before you do that. Point form, bullets, I think are great ways to get your story across. They're also, for me as an adjudicator, I like reading bullets. It's easier for me. I can check them, I can highlight them and check them against some of the indicators of success that I'm looking for in an application. So I really do like point form, and it can be a way to save on words as well. Some examples of the long and the short of it, and it just takes practice. I mean, the black is 20 words. And I've said the same thing in 7 words in the red below it. Utilize checklist to ensure requested information before applying. You can save time and space. So take a look at how you're writing. And text talk, leave that for texting. Please be concise, but we don't want to be concise that we're starting to say a survey was distributed before the decision was made to okay the project. You don't need that. And that doesn't send a message of professionalism. Texting isn't a professional language. It's a language of convenience. So leave it out of your grant applications. Unless you're maybe applying to a texting company or something where, and again, there's always a rule that's made to be broken. If that type of language, it depends. If it's acceptable to that particular funder, so be it. Maybe you're applying to Facebook or somebody that uses information like that. So just those are some things about being concise. I want to get in, and I realize that we're getting down on the last stretch here, and I've got a lot to cover. But budgets, and I've included a little more information about budgets here. But we're going to go through a lot of this, and I think this is a really, really important part to grant writing and understanding what you're doing. Because this is you've got your narrative of your application, and then you've got your budget. And the two better be bang on for you to be successful. So, I mean, I'm just going to start off with a budget it's about combining your goals and the resources you've got to do it and adding a number to them, the revenue and the expense towards doing what it is you're trying to achieve, towards making the impact that you want. It's about prioritizing your tasks and allocating those resources. I think you need a proper budget as well to be effective in evaluating the work that you do, because a major part of evaluation is financially, are we solvent? Were we successful in what we did from a financial point of view? And especially with nonprofits, often financial wellness is one of the main success indicators in evaluation, because you're out to make money to be able to support the work that you do. So what and why of a budget? We are not the government of Canada. We are not the government of Saskatchewan, who yesterday came in with a how many billion-dollar deficit budget? We can't do that in granting. There are deficit budgets, there are surplus budgets. In the grant game, we deal in balanced budgets, and you need to realize that. Your budgets need to balance when it comes time to adding up those bottom lines. So just be aware of that. Operational versus, excuse me, versus grant budgets. And again, operational become very much about your organization. You may be asked for some bigger grant applications for a copy of your last audited financial statement or your operational budget for the current year. All they're doing is substantiating that you in fact are doing the work that you say you are and that you're credible to be applying for that grant. So you may need to be prepared. But basically the difference, your grant budget is about a specific initiative that you're applying for. Your operational budget is about your overall organization. So just be aware of understanding the differences between those two items. Expenditures, capital expenditures. Those are more of a major or long-term expenses. They may have to do with the longevity of the item. Quite often capital expenditures are what I call bricks and mortar. It's equipment, it's vehicles, it's buildings. Sometimes it depends on the financial amount, whether it's classified as capital or not. But every organization often has policies of their own, what constitutes a capital expenditure for us. So your group needs to understand that. And if you don't understand it and don't understand whether it might fit or not, again, call the grant administrator. Here's an expense we're thinking of. Would that fall under capital or would that be operational? Check base with the funder first. Operating expenses are the day-to-day expenses, from employees' salaries to rent to taxes, that type of thing. Overhead expenses are things that maybe aren't specific to a program or an initiative, but it could be heating costs, it could be electricity costs, that type of thing. And some grants allow a percentage of overhead costs to be applied for. So you need to be aware of what overhead costs are, if in fact they might be applicable for some of the applications that you're doing. Then direct expense costs for the actual program or initiative you're doing. That's for the materials, the instructors you need for that particular event. Those are direct costs for you to deliver that program. Most of the time, the grant applications that nonprofits are going to be dealing with are for direct expenses. But I think you just need to be aware of the common expenses and kind of the definitions of each of them. In kind can be confusing, and often I get lots of questions like, what does in kind mean? How do we show it? In kind is a service or a contribution that is given of a good or a service that is not money. It's voluntary labor. It can be donated goods. It can be a service. I mean, I had an example of, we had courtesy cars given for a week-long event that we ran from a local car dealership. They didn't charge us for it, but make no bones about it, there is a cost to in-kind services. And you need to know what those costs are, because they've been donated in kind. But for a true picture of the cost of putting your event on, what would it have cost if I had to have rented those 6 vehicles for 7 days? There's a cost to it. So just understand that with in kind, and you may need to calculate that value and be ready. The applicant, the funder may want to know what the value of that in-kind service is. So you need to understand what in-kind is. There's also donations or other sources. Often, what other sources of funding do you have? It could be community donations. It could be in-kind services. And so you need to know the difference between co-contributions and in-kind. There's a couple examples here that a graphic designer has designed the logo for free for a local sport group, valued at $500. Well, that's an in-kind contribution. But a local accountant offered to pay for half of those same uniforms. That's a co-contribution or other sources. So you need to be able to differentiate between that. And there's another example on the bottom about volunteers donating to their help, as well as local tradespeople donating a certain amount worth of labor. One is a donation and a co-contribution, and one is in kind. And how do you value those? I mean, you can take, if you've got painters donating their services, well, you take what's a journeyman painter make and the hours that they're giving. That's how you calculate it. Volunteers, it depends what job they're doing. You may use minimum wage rates, or if they're doing a skilled labor position, you may put the skilled labor position hourly wage to be able to value what that contribution is. But you need to be able to understand contributions and in kind, because they come up quite often. High quality budgets, basically complete and an accurate outline of your program with your costs and your revenue that are eligible for the grant you're applying for. That's the bottom line. That's a high quality budget, and it'll increase your chances of getting approved. So you need accuracy. And I mean, it has to match your narrative of what you're doing. And we'll get into a little bit of detail about that. So where do you get your numbers from? Budgets are not guesses. Budgets are educated estimates. And I think you need to realize that. You can't just pull out numbers. You can look at historical research. What did programs and initiatives cost us to run last year? Quotes and estimates from suppliers, online quotes and estimates from fellow workers. You did a program like this last year. What were your staff costs? They're educated estimates, not guesstimates. And if you don't plan ahead, guesstimates are going to come into play, because you're going to just say, oh, it's going to be about $5,000. And you know what? You might be at a point in your career where you, in fact, can effectively guesstimate at things. There are some things that I can come probably, $5,000 figures. I can probably come within $50 because I know from my experience without making a call. So that depends too, is how experienced is the person that's doing the budget. But I mean, there's lots of ways. Use the reference points that are out there to help you get your numbers from other organizations, from municipalities or organizations. What do you charge for the mileage rate to do your estimates for staff or for instructors that are coming? Those are examples, but usually they have to be reasonable, and you have to know how you arrived at those numbers. So how do you make your budget shine? You have to start by making sure your budget matches your narrative. If you've got things on your budget lines that are nowhere in the explanation of what you're doing, you're in trouble. You've got to match what you're doing with the numbers that are on your budget. You also have to match your numbers. Quite often, the front page of a grant application will say the requested amount. And if it says $3,000 and in your budget you're requesting $2,000, they're going to set you aside and go, they don't know what they're doing. So you need the diligence of making sure that you're consistent through your whole application in what you say and the numbers that you put down. Consistent terminology. And I've seen this numerous times where someone says, we're doing a workshop in the explanation or the summary, but then in the budget, it's they're calling it a clinic. Well, you know what? That might sound simple, but if I'm an adjudicator and I'm going, well, they're doing a clinic or a workshop, is that the same thing? And your adjudicator all of a sudden is guessing. So make sure you use the same terms throughout. And again, know how you arrived at your budget numbers. If you put $4,000 down on a budget line, you have to have, they may ask for it in detail. Give us the details. They might not. But if they call you or send you an email and say, how did you arrive at $4,000? You have to have the answer. So I think knowing your numbers are realistic and knowing that you have rationale as to how you arrived at them is very, very important. just a few other things, showing self-help or other sources of funding. That's that sends the message of partnerships. That's huge in today's world. Sustainability or ongoing of the ongoing aspect of your project. That means that the money I give you to kickstart you this year as a funder, you're telling me may in fact the legacy may live on. That is good in my mind. I've helped to kickstart it, but you're showing me we've got plans for the future here. And that sends positive things to me as a funder. Other sources of funding that you need to know what else you're applying for and at what stage are they at? Are they approved? Is it approval pending? You need to know those things. And again, we don't deal in surplus or deficit budgets. They have to balance. So you build your budgets from all the expense items, from the resources that you're going to require from these various different types of resources, from facilities to staff to permits and licenses, insurance, all of those things. Same with the revenue side. You have to build your budget based on the historical research or the estimates and the numbers that you found for the revenue that will in fact come. Okay, I'm looking at the clock here. So I'm just about to the point we're getting to the final run of tips and stuff, but we're just about through the budget aspect, which I don't want to shortchange you, pun intended, on the budget aspect of it. So basically, you've got your overall revenue and expense budget. And again, the bottom lines have to balance. But this is fine in a lot of applications, but you need to take it to the next level. And at least in your budget files, have this. You need the details. How did you get to those numbers? And who's giving you those numbers? So your event instructors, you know that you're getting $1,000 from Sask Sport and $1,000 from Sask Culture. That's how you arrived at $2,000. There's some in-kind that you're getting nourishment and refreshments from the local grocery store. That's an in-kind donation. And again, that can be important because some grants will not pay for nourishment or food. So you're showing that we have nourishment, but it's being donated. It's not coming out of any grant dollars. So you need to have these details for the revenue and the expenditures as well. The same with the other side of it. So they may not ask for the details, but to develop your budget, you have to have the details anyways, if you've done it in a proper fashion. Padding the budget. Should you do it? And I'm not going to say yes or no, but basically that means adding a contingency fund. Miscellaneous, the famous miscellaneous column, 10% extra or whatever. Some might view that as waffling, that you're not sure about your numbers. But in today's post-COVID world, I would suggest that the diligence of adding maybe a percentage to some of your numbers is not a terrible thing. For the simple reason that, hey, I've dealt with suppliers in post-COVID times that their quote or estimate is only good for 7 days. That's how volatile the pricing market is. So should you pad a budget? If you do 3 to 10%, depending, check the industry standard for what you're working in. Check with your grant administrator saying, our prices are crazy. We're going to add, a contingency fund just so you know. And being upfront about that, there's nothing wrong with that. So padding your budget or adding a contingency percentage, those are questions that maybe you need to look at. But it's not a question that I can tell you yes or no. But you know what? Do it wisely if you do. And be upfront about it if you do. So here's some tips specific to budgets from actual administrators. Math errors. Check your numbers. It should not only add up properly, but it should match the budget. It should mirror the activities you're doing. So what you say you're doing on this hand, your budget is a mirror image of it on this hand. If they don't match, it's meaningless and your application will probably be set aside. Again, itemize what you ask for, what they give you. If they want details, give them details. One adjudicator states that they automatically flip straight to the budget. They want to see your due diligence on the numbers first. That's a real technical aspect. And so you better have your budget right, because if there's some things that raise red flags with that adjudicator in your budget, they probably aren't even going to look at the rest of your application. So check out previous successful applicants. SAS Culture is a really good example of this. On their grants, you can go on their website and it'll give you organizations that were successful last year. How cool is that, to be able to actually call and check with other organizations and see what they did to be successful. Take a look and find out what success looks like. That's huge. Deal in round numbers. Most budgets don't want nickels and dimes. You know, if it's a larger six-figure budget or application, I mean, you're probably rounding off to the nearest thousands even. So don't deal in minute amounts or pennies and that type of thing. Have somebody take a look at your work. Proofread it. Proofread your budget. Proofread your whole application. A rushed job, adjudicators will tell you they will know if it's been rushed, because there will always be little red flags that show up. So again, taking the time. Provide exactly what you're asked for. No more, no less. And I think that's just, you know, giving them more than they want doesn't make you look like you're more effective. You're just ticking them off because they have to look at more stuff. So give them exactly what they want. Follow things to a T. Simplicity, proofread. I like this one final statement here. Grant funders and adjudicators, they can recognize BS. They just can. They've done it for a while. So you need to know, you're probably not going to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. So you need to be real. So I'm about 3 minutes out from 11:30. I may go, do I have permission? I do this all the time. Do I have permission to go a little bit over, Jessica?
Yes, of course. And if somebody needs to leave, that's fine. We'll just keep recording Shelley and share the recording with you.
That's the money aspect of it. And I spent more time on that because that's a huge aspect to every application. But now we get into evaluation plans. And you know, a lot of organizations are remiss that they do not plan for evaluation. And you know what that leads to? If you're putting on an event, say it's a huge banquet, a huge gala night that you're putting on, and you don't have an evaluation plan, quite often you'll just say, well, we didn't run out of food and we didn't lose money. We're a success. You know what? Those might be parts of success, but do you actually have an evaluation plan for your event? It's more than just about not running out of food and maybe making some money. Were there things in the event that could have been done better? So, I mean, if you don't evaluate, you have nothing to compare. You don't know if you've succeeded even. So I think in a formal evaluation, often adjudicators and applicants or funders will ask, what's your plan for evaluation? So most of the time it's not optional when it comes to granting. And you need to prove that you were successful, or maybe you weren't successful. Not everything succeeds. What were the strengths and weaknesses of your event? Did your participants experience something? Did you make money? Can we operate more efficiently and maintain an ongoing event with the things that we do? Those are reasons for evaluation. And the guidebook talks a bit more about evaluation, where you actually develop success indicators. What will success look like for us? It might be about numbers. It might be about number of dollars that we made. It could be about increased skills, or it could just be an increased pride in the community. Who will gather the measurements, the test results? Who's going to do the evaluation? How will it be done? Will we use surveys? Will we just talk to people? Will we use pictures? There's various ways of evaluating. And who will we report it back to? If you plan for this, you can easily cut and paste your evaluation into the final report for your funder because they require a report. I don't know of anybody that just gives you money and says, have fun. Don't even call us back. Most people want to know what's going on with what you've done. That gets into follow-up. You might as well prepare for it. You have a duty by accepting the funds that you received to report back on how things went. And you know what, even if your funder didn't ask for that, I still believe that's just respectful duty, is letting somebody know how it went. Here's how your money was used, and here's the impact that it had. So follow-up, I believe, in 99.9% of the cases is your duty. So do not neglect this duty, because if you, in fact, do not follow up, you are more than likely going to be turned down because you'll be marked as non-compliant in their files when you apply next year. So, I mean, follow-up can be a review of how you actually ran your event yourself, an evaluation summary of the actual initiative, a checklist from the funders. They'll say, here's what we require. We want some pictures. We want to see that our logos were on display at your event. We want to see some of this. Make sure you follow their requirements if they have a list. And then sharing and celebrating what you actually did. And again, you can see more of this in the template with some specific things to answer. So I'm just going to wrap up here in the next few minutes, but I love this section. This is my favorite section. This comes from real people talking about real situations, about writing tips and advice for grant applications and grant writing. And I love the 12-12-12 rule. Imagine that you're submitting an application and it's 12 midnight and the adjudicator has been working for 12 straight hours and you're the 12th application that she's got in her stack. How are you going to get her attention? She's tired, it's late at night, and you aren't the first one on the block that she's looked at. Think about that. You need to tell your story. And the key you need to be inspirational in your writing as you tell that story. So think about the 12-12-12 rule. How do we make sure that this half asleep grant adjudicator wakes up and goes, wow, this is something else? That's your job to do that. Use plain and simple language. Again, some of this will be redundant in some things that I've maybe said, but this is from some real people who are saying, here's what to do and what not to do. Proofread. Proofread. Make sure spelling mistakes, those types of things send wrong messages. They send messages, and again, I've seen 2 spelling mistakes in my PowerPoint presentation, and I feel awful about it. How did I miss it? I don't know, but I'm more professional than that. But you want to send that professional message to them. So proofread. Again, terminology. Understand what they're saying. Don't be gushy. Most of you will know what that means. You need to get their attention, but you don't want to go on and on and on. It's like a bad interview on the morning news that should have been 1.5 minutes. It's now 5 minutes, and it's like, I quit listening. If you're too long and too gushy, your adjudicator quits looking. Sincerity and honesty, inspirational words. Share your testimonials. If you've got stories to tell them. And I often say our Indigenous friends and neighbors tell stories. And it's a wonderful way. Storytelling is a wonderful way to capture our imaginations and get our passion across. So learn to tell the stories. Be better at that. Sell yourself. Don't be humble. Be proud about yourself. Again, without being cocky, to coin a pop culture phrase, if you will. Use short answers, again, bullet points. Ensure your web page and your social media sites match what you say. That is a really important one, especially for bigger grants. There are people in larger corporations and large organizations that's what they do. They check social media. They'll check prospective employees out. They'll check grant applicants out. And if you've BS'd a little bit, they'll find out by checking out your real everyday sites. So make sure that those sites are up to date as well, because if they aren't, it doesn't send a good message to the adjudicators. Build relationships, send updates. You know what? Even if it's not time to accept the grant from Shelley Corporation, a funder, give Shelley Corporation a call, send them an email and say, hey, just want to say thanks again that you funded us for this last year. Our organization is doing great. We're just touching base. We just want to let you know we're still out here and we hope we can be partners again. That's all. Sometimes you've put something in that funder's head that, wow, that's pretty progressive. They're just touching base. They didn't ask for something. Build the relationships. You've stayed on their radar. Practice at doing that because it makes a real big difference. Get help. Build your team. Use all the money that you've been given. Be prompt. If you're asked for something, don't dilly-dally with it. Listen to the request and be prompt and meet the deadlines. Deliver on what you said you're going to do, and say thank you. That gets back into building relationships. And you know what? Send your participants to thank your funders. Have them write an email. Somebody that, the kids in the daycare that had an effect on your fundraiser, have them make sure, give each of them one of your sponsors or one of your grantors or your funders. And you have that child go and thank those people. You don't think that has some impact? Say thank you in a different way, not just go above and beyond. And I really believe that makes you stand out as an organization as well. I'm going to go through some negatives here. Don't talk more about your problems than your solutions. Oh dear, we all have problems. We have no money. We have no participants. We have this is bad, this is bad. No, you can address your issues, but then here are our solutions. That's the impact we're going to make. Don't cut and paste things out of your funder's website. That's easily recognizable. They're just using our words. I mean, you can show that you are the right person to be applying without actually using their words. Again, be specific, addressing specific issues. And again, it's funny how BS has come up 3 times now. Please, no BS. We will know if your submission is a fly by the seat of the pants application. That scares me when I hear that. So make sure to go ahead. Unanswered questions. Don't give me more support materials than I need or ask for. Don't give me information that I haven't asked for. Don't be general with your budget numbers. Don't indicate to me that your project is continuous because that sends the message that you don't know. Oh, it's continuous. Well, you have no plan probably. Most of the time that sends a message that they don't know. So usually there's a start and a finish. Unless it is, you might say the initiative will continue on with this support. But if you just say it's a continuous project, that's a red flag for me right away because it says you don't really know. Jargon, again, clear outcomes, no alignment with funder priorities, lack of clarity, errors, fishing expeditions, cutting and pasting. These are all things to avoid. It's got to be your application, your words, your estimates, your passion. So please avoid these things in the application. In summary, the things to not avoid: positive impact. Paint your clear picture of why you're doing what you're doing, what impact you're going to make. People love to hear the good, feel-good why stories. Clear, concise financial plans that match your activities. Solid applications are always derived from solid plans. If you remember nothing else, solid planning is the key to good grant writing. Follow the funder applications 100%. So I know I've gone over about 9 minutes and I apologize for that. But I just want to know, how are you feeling? Are you feeling a bit energized? Are you still going, oh, I can't do all of this? It's a lot, but it really isn't, because once you take the time to organize yourself, grant writing is not going to be as challenging. I guarantee it. So I'm going to sign off with that, and just, I hope you're ready to write your grants and get grant ready. If there are questions, I'll certainly entertain them. You know what, if anybody also needs to email me questions, I'm more than happy to do that and answer. I'm totally approachable. So I'll leave
Sure.
it.
Thanks, Shelley. Yeah, I'll include your contact information in the email that I send out.
Sounds good.
One other comment I just want to make in terms of artificial intelligence. Community Futures recently had an artificial intelligence session, and I'm going to include that link to that recording as well. It comes in handy in terms of proofreading. You can literally put all of your text into ChatGPT and it will edit it for you. So you just say, can you please proof this document or this, and you just copy and paste it, and they'll just proof it for you. Even in terms of, you can say in ChatGPT, can you make this genuine, like the tone and the voice of it, can you make this a genuine human, nonprofit, female with a disability context? And they will write it in that tone. You just need to ask. So I'm going to include that also in the email I send back. And then if anybody has any other questions, it'd be great to hear. Doesn't look like it. Well, thank you, Shelley. This has been really great. Honestly,
That's
just
awesome.
really great. Yeah.
Good. I hope people walked away with something, and I'm always happy to connect with people. And again, my door is open. If anybody ever wants to talk about anything, I'm up for it. So it's so good. Yeah.
Perfect.
And
Thank you. And thank you.
I want the link to that chat.
Yeah, I will.
Intelligence session.
I will send it to you.
More about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once you get that slideshow, if you send it to me, I'll send everything to everyone all at the same time.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.